Hi, buddy boyos. This video is just an inkwell rant about history, horror, and the silence behind everything. During World War II, Japan's Unit 731 carried out some of the most horrific atrocities in modern history. In the name of scientific progress and military superiority, they built a vast program of human experimentation in occupied China. Thousands of people, mostly young, poor men, including Chinese peasants, prisoners of war, and suspected dissidents, were taken as live test subjects. These men were systematically infected with deadly diseases like plague, cholera, anthrax, and syphilis. Some were dissected alive without anesthesia to study the effects of pathogens on internal organs. Others were frozen, dehydrated, starved, burned, or exposed to lethal doses of radiation or poison gas, all while still conscious. The horror did not end in the laboratory. The data from these experiments was used to develop biological weapons that were tested on civilian populations. In some regions, Japanese planes dropped ceramic bombs filled with plague-infected fleas mixed with grain or cotton to attract villagers and spread infection. Entire towns were wiped out as the plague spread uncontrollably, killing people in agonizing suffering. These were not isolated incidents, but part of a coordinated program to refine biological warfare using real populations as living test zones. After the war, the architects of these crimes, figures like General Shiro Ishii, were never prosecuted. Instead, they were granted immunity by the United States in exchange for their research data. Their work was quietly absorbed into Western military programs, while their victims were erased from history and denied justice. The knowledge was preserved. The suffering was buried in silence. What is hardest to bear, especially once belief in God, justice beyond the grave, or any absolute meaning is gone, is realizing that some lives were nothing but agony. These people were born only to suffer, to be tortured, and to vanish. No ritual, no remembrance, no historical record can undo what was done to them. Their pain remains suspended in time, raw and unanswered, untouched by any justice or consolation during or after life. It feels, at first glance, that the absence of justice for the perpetrators only deepens the horror. And perhaps it does, for those of us who remain. But for the victims themselves, for those whose brief existence was defined by nothing but torture and erasure, justice would have changed nothing. Their lives would still have been absurd, their suffering just as meaningless. They are dead. It is over, and no tribunal, no punishment, no recognition can retroactively give shape or value to what was pure loss. The injustice was total, not because it went unpunished, but because it happened at all. There are courts to judge the crimes of men, but there is no tribunal where nature can be held accountable. And yet, a vast portion of the world's suffering, quiet, unnoticed, and unearned, has no human cause. Some are born condemned. Through sheer biological chance, they inherit pain, loneliness, or rejection. The condition of the incel, for example, is not the result of a cruel design, but of natural imbalances that inflict deep and humiliating suffering. If nature had a face, perhaps it could be sued, but it does not. And so we live with this misery, unequally distributed, unanswered by justice. Even if justice existed, it would change nothing for those whose lives were already shattered. How does one avoid losing their mind when faced with this reality, whether as a distant witness or as someone whose own life, while far less extreme, still resonates with that same absurdity? This is not merely history. It is a brutal glimpse into the heart of existence itself, a universe indifferent, silent, and ultimately incapable of justice or mercy. To fully grasp this is to stare into the void where no consolation exists, and that alone can shatter the mind. There is nothing, just silence, and that silence unravels the mind. Yet even in the face of nothingness, the mind refuses to surrender. It searches desperately for some hidden meaning, some fragment of sense to make the absurd bearable. Even now, as I write, I feel as though I've forgotten something crucial, like a key just out of reach. But it's an illusion. There is nothing. And it is precisely that absence that threatens to tear everything apart. There's not much to say. Every attempt at explanation risks becoming a lie. And yet, to say nothing feels equally unbearable. Perhaps the only thing left is to name the horror for what it is, to speak it plainly. But even that, however sincere, vanishes into the void like an echo with no walls. And the emptiness it leaves behind is unbearable. Maybe, in the end, there is only this. They no longer suffer. The dead feel nothing. Their agony, however vast, has ended. What haunts me is not their absence, but the shape of the lives they had to endure. Their pain was real, but it ended. Life, however brutal, does not last. No injustice is eternal. The universe is indifferent, but it is also impermanent. And perhaps that impermanence, as cold and empty as it is the closest thing to mercy we will ever know.